Moving along with the third-party discussion, I mentioned the difference between fixed versus variable cost. This is one of the big sales arguments, and a legitimate one, that 3PLs will come to the table with. That they have the infrastructure, they have the footprint, they have the buildings, they have the technology, and that they can offer a company variable pricing, which is to say, based on volume. You need to know what the pricing structure is going to look like. Some years back, and I'm talking as recently as the early 2000s, 3PLs, especially in a warehouse environment, liked cost-plus pricing, which is to say they would determine what their costs were and then add on a percentage, 5%, 10%, whatever was negotiated. For a variety of reasons, cost-plus is still around, but the companies that are outsourcing to the 3PLs, the actual customers, really don't like that very much because the definition of cost can be different between the parties. If we're going to really operate in a variable cost environment, we need to be pricing by a unit of measure. Maybe it's a pallet, maybe it's a carton, maybe it's, again, an article of clothing if we're in that industry. But if the essence of outsourcing in a warehousing environment is to get into a variable cost structure, let's make it that way, where we pay, pick a number, $10 a pallet storage within and out per month, depending on the number of pallets that go through a given 3PL system. That's how much we as the customer will pay. That's a variable cost structure. Another thing to get consideration on or clarity on from a pricing perspective, our last bullet, is the storage versus goods movement. I mentioned a moment ago that pallet pricing might be per month, storage plus in and out, the actual physical movement of goods into the facility and back out. You need to make a distinction between storage costs versus physical handling costs. On the contractual clauses side of things, what's the length of the contract? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? I've seen contracts as long as 10 years. Within those contracts, what are the performance standards? What is the 3PL signing up for as it relates to order accuracy, productivity, costs, considerations, all of those things. Of course, the pricing component has to be in that contract as well. What are the payment terms, 30 days, 60 days, and the resource commitments from the 3PL to make sure that this operation works. Resources in terms of floor space or warehouse space, resources in terms of IT support, information technology support, the account team that's going to support our business. That's what we mean by resource commitments. And then last point on this slide, and really important, we as the customer, we as the company that is outsourcing these activities to a 3PL, we have to have an SOP in place, a standard operating procedure that covers every single last aspect of our relationship, complete with KPIs, signed off by all parties, and we have a standard from which to work. Those written SOPs, can't emphasize the importance of that enough. Moving along, on the third-party side of things, we want to have, ideally, we as the customer that's doing the outsourcing here, we want to have clear knowledge of what the account management team is going to look like. 3PLs today can be sizable organizations, and while very capable organizations, it's not difficult to get lost in the shuffle as a customer. So we want to know who's our account manager, what does the account team look like, are we going to use perhaps a control tower, which is to say a group of people within the 3PL organization that is responsible for executing on all of our operational activities. You want clarity on what your account management team looks like, what the escalation path is, who answers to who, what are the resources available from a personnel perspective, etc. We want to look very closely at the technology side of things. Having the physical plant, the buildings, the layout, the people, all very important, but that technology side of things has to be there as well, especially the connectivity with the 3PL system. So we as the customer have our own ERP, we run our own inventory management, our own order management activities. How do we tie that into the warehouse management system of the 3PL, and even perhaps the transportation management system of the 3PL as well, if they are indeed providing transportation services to us. At least 4 times a year, we want to be having a QBR, a quarterly business review, where we sit down with the 3PL and go over the contract, all the performance criteria, all of the KPIs to measure how we're doing and how we as a team can improve. Not only how the 3PL can improve, but how we as an organization can improve as well. How we help the 3PL to help us. And those KPIs, of course, we broke them down a moment ago. Cost related, productivity related, customer service, safety, and green initiatives.